Really nice that you could join us this morning. My name's Kirsten and I live in a community, as I was saying, just around the corner from the London Buddhist Centre. So I'm speaking to you from our shrine room this morning. It's really lovely to be able to welcome you here for our Sub25 class. So this is a class that's run by young people and specifically aimed at those who are between the ages of 16 to 25. So it's really lovely to welcome you here this morning. If you're not under 25, that's absolutely fine. Feel free to stay for the first half of the class, but I'll just give you an overview of what we'll be doing together this morning. So in a moment, we'll kick off with a meditation, which I'll guide us through. So if you haven't meditated with the London Buddhist Centre before, don't worry, you don't need any previous experience of that. I'll just be leading us through that. So we'll be meditating for about 15-20 minutes. And then after that, we've got Danayutta here with us. She's giving us a little wave. I'm not sure if you can see her, but Danayutta will be giving us a talk this morning on death and impermanence. So that's the second talk in our series that we're currently doing in the Sub25 class on the 4 mind turnings. If you didn't quite catch the first class, don't worry, it's a standalone talk, but just so that you can kind of have the context of the talk. So Danayutta will be talking to us about death and impermanence this morning. So at that point, we'll be about halfway through the class and we'll stop streaming to YouTube after Danayutta's talk. And what we'll do is we'll migrate over onto Zoom. So if you've been joining the Sub25 classes since they've been online, you'll know that we've been having these Zoom classes where we can break out into discussion groups and really just have a chance to kind of talk about any themes that have come up for us from the talk. So after Danayutta's talk, we'll be moving over to Zoom. We'll be in discussion groups, breakout groups, and you'll have about 15 minutes just to talk about anything that's come up for you within those groups. And then after the breakout groups, we'll have a question and answer session with Danayutta as well, and myself if you wanted to ask me anything. But Danayutta will be here to offer you any guidance or any help with any questions that you've got. Okay, so that's the broad kind of format of the morning. You don't need to remember all of that. I'll just kind of lead us through as we're going along. But for now, we're going to get started with the meditation. So make sure that you're sitting comfortably. A lot of you might be sat on chairs. If you're sat on a chair, just make sure that you've got firm contact with the ground with your feet, that your feet are flat on the floor, and that you can sit upright so that you're not kind of slouching into a sofa or anything. Just try and sit as upright as you can. You might also want to grab a scarf or a blanket and something to support your hands. So I've got a scarf here. You could also use a cushion if you just wanted to pop that in your lap, just so you've got something to rest your hands on so that you can keep your shoulders open. Yeah, and we'll be meditating for about 15-20 minutes. So yeah, just make sure that you've got everything that you need to be comfortable in that time. You might also just want to reduce the brightness of your screen. If you're watching on your laptop or an iPad, just maybe reduce the brightness of that so that the glare isn't interfering with your meditation. And once you're settled, once you're comfortable, just close your eyes. See if you can feel the relief of closing your eyes. Already you might feel your face start to soften. And just start to come into contact with your body. Feeling your feet flat on the floor. A sense of energy rising up through the spine. Sitting upright, but allowing your shoulders just to release away from your ears. Your shoulder blades just melting down your back. allowing your chest to open. You may want to start taking a few deeper breaths, feeling your belly being moved by the breath. And if there's any tightness or any sense of holding in the belly, just see if you can breathe into that. See if you can release that tightness, allowing the breath to move you. Softening your jaw, softening your brow, the area around your eyes. Just settling into a sense of ease, a sense of release. And as you feel your body softening, starting to relax, just see if you can comb through your awareness, and if you do find any little knots of tension, just breathe into those. See if they can soften with the breath. As your body softens, see if you can become aware of any pleasant sensations in your body. Maybe there's a warmth or a tingling in the palms of your hands, in the soles of your feet. Maybe you can notice a sense of warmth or openness in your heart, around your heart area. Wherever you find this pleasant sensation, just allow your attention to rest there. Just to rest in your direct experience. Just allowing that sense of pleasure to grow. allowing that sense of pleasure to open. If you notice yourself starting to drift away, just spend a few moments coming back into contact with your body, feeling the earth beneath your feet, feeling the energy in your spine, your shoulders relaxing, your chest opening. And once you've spent a few moments there, just turn your intention back towards resting your awareness in pleasure, wherever you find pleasant sensation in the body. Just allowing ourselves to fully experience any pleasant sensations. Now see if you can start to gently broaden that awareness, expand that awareness to take in other people in your household, people that you're living with, maybe your neighbors, maybe people outside. Just see if you can broaden out your awareness while staying connected to your direct experience in your body. Stay connected to that experience, but just shifting the focus slightly to turn outwards. Developing an intention of sending any warmth, any openness that we've cultivated outwards towards the rest of the world, towards all beings. Staying connected to our direct experience, just bringing more and more beings into our awareness. Maybe the other people that are meditating with you in this class this morning. Just holding those people in your awareness. Just focusing on an intention of expansion, of openness. Now, for the last couple of minutes of the meditation, just let go of any effort that you're making. And just sit in the effects of your meditation. Allow yourself the space to absorb your meditation. Just sitting in broad awareness of your direct experience. Starting to become more aware of the noises around you, of the room that you're in. Gently starting to let go of the meditation. When you're ready, just opening your eyes. Great. Good. Well done, everyone. It's really nice to be able to meditate with you. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to hand over to Danayutta. And as I mentioned before, Danayutta will be giving us a talk on death and impermanence, which is the second talk in our series on the four mind turnings. So I'll just hand over to Danayutta now to give us that talk.
Thanks, Kirsten. And yes, welcome from me as well. Welcome to our stream, welcome to our Zoom. So as Kirsten was saying, we've been covering the four mind turnings, the four reminders in the Sub25 class. And these are a set of traditional reflections that provide a foundation for further mind training practices, further mind training instructions, practices of wisdom teachings, and the development of the heart of awakening, the development of bodhicitta. So I thought I'd just do a quick whiz through the four reminders. So just in case you've forgotten what they are or you're new to these teachings, the first of the reminders is the preciousness of life. The second of the reminders is the certainty of death. The third one is karma, and that we're the product of our actions. And the fourth reminder is reflecting on the defects of unenlightened experience. So these reminders are usually studied in pairs, and I think this is especially true of the first two, the preciousness of life and the certainty of death. I think it's actually really very hard to reflect on death effectively without having a strong sense of positive emotion and being in touch with the vibrancy and the potential of a well-lived life. So maybe that's just really worth saying and emphasizing first up, that what follows actually just comes with a strong health warning. You need to make sure that you're not in a nihilistic frame of mind, because if you are, you might get the wrong end of the instructions, the wrong end of the stick, and actually reflecting on death increases disconnection and might even put you in quite a depressed state. So if you notice that happening, what you need to do is to build a stronger foundation of positivity before turning back to these death reflections. So the best way to cultivate a sense of preciousness of life are through gratitude practice and also generosity practice. We can become aware of how much we already have and how deeply interconnected the world is. We get so much from people, even simple things like the vegetables that we eat were grown by somebody, picked and packed by somebody, shipped by somebody, sold by somebody, cooked by somebody. And we get so much, yeah? It's just like little vegetables. If you think about everything that you own, you'll just realize how dependent you are on other people. And this knowing of the benefits that we receive in Buddhism is called Danayutta. That's got this like cognitive aspect to gratitude. Generosity similarly puts us in touch with our own potential and our own qualities. By giving to other people, we immediately get the feedback that we've got something to give. So on that basis of a positive frame of mind, one can reflect on the impermanence of life and death. There's so many ways that one can reflect on death and one's own death and the death of other people, people who we like or even people who we don't like, people who we love and also people who we regard as enemies. One of the first few verses of the Dhammapada say, "Others do not realize that we're all headed for death, and those who do will compose their quarrels." So others do not realize that we're all headed for death, and those who do will compose their quarrels. This is a verse that I keep coming back to again and again. And it's probably enough for a lifetime's worth of death reflections. But I think for most of us, death is really hard to think about. It's hard to think about in the abstract without sort of like thinking about actual people, death of actual people. So I thought I'd just share with you some reflections and some stories from my own life around death. Somebody asked me this morning what I was going to talk about, and when I told them, they said that the title of my talk ought to be "For Funerals and a Wedding." So that's what follows. I'm not sure that this really translates across to a sub-25 kind of generation. Probably it came out before any of you were born. I think it came out in 1994, and possibly the oldest of you were born in 1995. Anyway, it's a very, very good film, and it launched Hugh Grant's acting career. He's quite old now, but he was like really, really young and beautiful then. Anyway. So the first funeral I like to talk about, actually I won't say very much about it, but I would like to play a 1.5 minute video clip. And just to say that it was filmed this very Thursday. Yeah, so Michael's going to play the clip now. think like that line in the Dhammapada, one could probably reflect on that little video clip, and that's probably enough. I thought the little details were very, very interesting. You know, the people with their folded hands. I don't know if you could hear, but there was a little child in the background going, "Where's she going? Where's that going?" The quiet chanting of Om Adi Hung Swaha, the cyclist who overtakes the cortege, and life just sort of going on at the end of the video. It was quite interesting that that sort of bright yellow figure just turning up Globe Road. So the second and third funerals I wanted to talk about was early in my involvement at the London Buddhist Centre. I went to the funeral of an order member called Vidya Jyoti. She was very, very well known, actually, not just in our order, but also in the local community. She lived kind of opposite the London Buddhist Centre, above what is now the co-op. And she's a very, very bubbly, very friendly, totally outrageous Jewish Buddhist artist, and originally from New York. So she was in the order, and the funeral was at the London Buddhist Centre. And that afternoon, the center was full to the brim of her friends and people who knew her. I think at some point there wasn't even standing room available in the shrine room. And it was a ceremony that was full of love and full of beauty and full of friendship. And they played an audio recording of her talking about her own death and her own funeral. And some of her friends stood next to the open casket and sang to her. It was just gorgeous. And other people told stories and jokes from her time. Like a couple of stories sort of stuck in my mind from that funeral. One was that so she was ill for a little bit of time before she died. No one actually knew what was wrong with her except that she was steadily getting worse and was dying. And when she was in hospital, she got so many cards and so many visits that the nurses and the hospital staff thought she was a kind of celebrity. But she wasn't. She was just an order member. And I think at the funeral, Nyana Vacha, who at that time was the chair of the London Buddhist Centre, he told this little story about when he went to visit Vidya Jyoti in hospital. So him and Maitra Bandhu went to visit Vidya Jyoti. And when they arrived, Vidya Jyoti started teasing them. And you have to imagine her saying this in a strong New Yorker accent, very, very nasal, you know, very Jewish. And she said something along the lines of, "Oh, Nyana Vacha, Maitra Bandhu, you guys are always like teaching and talking about impermanence, but look at me, hey, I'm actually doing impermanence." So that funeral was just like a big celebration and a big affirmation of life. And I thought that was quite interesting how this funeral of somebody who I didn't know very well touched me and motivated me so much. You know, I've been to very, very big and lavish funerals in my life. My great grandmother died when I was about 8, and it was in Malaysia, and it was a very lavish funeral. It went on for a whole 5 days, and we had professional wailers crying for us into the night, marquees and caterers, and 2 marching bands. You know, it was very, very big and very loud. And there were lots of people and lots of flowers. My grandfather was something of a local philanthropist in his time. And when I finally went back to school, one of my classmates complained to me about how the funeral kept her up at night, even though she lived a few streets away from where we lived. And despite that funeral being quite big and sort of quite clear in my mind, I think actually it was Vidya Jyoti's funeral where I finally, well, not finally, but maybe I started to understand what it means when people say that all Buddhist practice is a preparation for death. And it's not just preparing to have a good death, you know, a death that's free from suffering and free from regret, but also to be surrounded by friends and to have a life that's well lived. Death, I think, is a motivation for the practice of love and friendship. Motivation to really focus on what's important in our lives. So I thought I'd share with you what I do about reflecting on my own death. So it's the last death I'll talk about, reflecting on my own death. One of the traditional things that one reflects upon when reflecting upon death is not just that death is certainly going to happen to us, but that none of us know when it might happen. So even though death is certain, we don't know when we're going to die, and we don't know when other people are going to die. And one of the ways I try to remember this is by taking leave of my teachers. And that's sort of represented by the women who have ordained me. So I thought I'd just show you a picture from my ordination. And this person is Muditashri. She was the one who gave me the name Danayutta, and she was the one who privately ordained me. And I always try to remember to take leave of her. I used to live with her, I don't anymore, but I always try to say goodbye and tell her how much I love her before I embark on a big trip, or at the start and in the middle of this pandemic. I often find myself like texting her before, while sitting on the plane on the runway, or just sort of calling her when I come back from my trips. It's quite a traditional thing to do. You get stories from the Pali Canon from the time of the Buddha, where Shariputra and Moggallana, when they knew they were going to die, before they went off to die, they went and visited the Buddha for the last time to say goodbye properly. And I think I do this because it reminds me that my life is centered around my Buddhist practice, and that ordination is a strong symbol for my Buddhist practice, for the reason for my life. It's a precious thing to me, and it's important. And it's a very, very positive basis from which to reflect on the realities of impermanence and death. It's a foundation to a life of meaning and a life well lived. So this brings us to the wedding bit. I was ordained on a 3-month retreat in the Spanish mountains, and it was a really, really wonderful time. I just felt like suddenly I had been given a new name and really sort of affirmed in my purpose of my life. So on my way back from this long 3-month retreat, I sat on a train journey from Barcelona to Paris, and I happened to sit next to a man who I didn't know at the time, but he turned out to be the father of an order member. And he was very, very kindly, and I guess he sort of understood what it meant to have been away for 3 months. And he asked me about my ordination, and I said that it was the best day of my life. So he said, "How was your ordination?" I said, "It was the best day of my life." And he was really surprised. He said, "What? Was it even better than your wedding day?" And I was like, "Yeah, it was definitely better than my wedding day." So I think that's all I want to say, about really reflecting on what's precious to you in your life, and using that as a basis to reflect on what death might mean. So hopefully that gives you something to start off with. Maybe I'll just hand back to Kirsten now.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Danayutta. Yeah, definitely a lot to explore there. So we're going to have an opportunity to do that now. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop the YouTube live stream. And if you'd like to join in the discussion, we'll have breakout groups on Zoom. I think Michael or Greg will just post the link to the Zoom meeting in the YouTube now. And what I'd invite you to do is just hop on over to Zoom, and we'll have a chance to break out into smaller groups to talk about the themes that Danayutta was bringing in there. Okay, so and just a reminder that this is a class for Sub25. So if you are over 25, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's been really, really lovely to have you. But we would ask that the discussion groups are just for young people, just to give people a chance to kind of explore these themes with people in a similar life stage, similar context to them. Great, so we'll just stop the